So Rachel, if you're watching Facebook, you should see us on Facebook Live right now, I believe, coming up here. Setting it up. Oh. You see us out on Facebook, Rachel?
No, I should though, right?
Should be streaming out there, yeah. Well, I have 10 o'clock straight up. I'm Brad Thompson, founder of Red Key, here today on Tuesday, the 21st of April, with Rachel Kodanaz. Rachel and I actually met back in the 90s as we put our puzzle together and started talking. I used to work with her husband many, many moons ago, and it's been fun to reconnect with her just recently based on our similar interest in trying to help people. So Rachel, welcome today. How are you doing?
Thanks, and I'm glad it's great to be together. And it was fun last week reconnecting on so many different levels. As you know, my background's IT telecommunication, as is yours, and now we're both doing what I call these soft skills to help people. So it's kind of fun to transition and to transition with like minds because we've got that little bit of the business side of it going on. So it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm super excited to learn more about your most recent book that you've written. Rachel is a best-selling author, a public speaker, and just a great mentor and support for so many people. Rachel, why don't you share with our viewers today a little bit about your background and how your path has gotten to where you are?
So thanks, and I'm thrilled to be on today. So as I shared, my background is more business, more corporate America, and many years ago in corporate America, I had a very unfortunate situation. My husband passed away suddenly. It was arrhythmia, just couldn't recover, sudden death, no illness. Left me with a 2-year-old daughter, and that kind of shook up my world. And where I went to with that were not all people in the grief and loss world. Mine was more practical. I still had this 2-year-old. I still had to work full time. I had 3 offices, and this was before, like, I was traveling every week, and this was way before there were roller bags and car companies had car seats, and I was carrying all that stuff. And what I really went to was, I know there's a lot of religion out there when it comes to grief and loss, but what I found was there wasn't a lot of bridges to that, because while religion is great for your soul and it really fills it here, it doesn't take the practicality of the loss or things that you have to deal with. So I created a program for grief in the workplace, which was it just brings in, like I said, practical ideas of how to greet a person when they're returning to work, or how to handle a work group when somebody passes away. With that said, that went to the next writing, Living with Loss One Day at a Time, which you had spoke of. It's 365 lessons and thoughts and loss. But my approach to that one is, again, practicality and tactical ways of dealing with it. But my latest is what brought us together, which is really exciting, and I'll do a little shout out, is Finding Peace One Piece at a Time, What to Do with Yours and Your Loved Ones' Possessions. Many of my conferences that I've spoke at, people will come up to me afterwards and say, what do I do with this? How do I handle this? So I wrote this book last year, it just came out in October, that it was really, how do you and what do you do with these possessions? So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm here to talk to you about it because it dovetails with what you're doing.
Well, that's awesome. So how long have you been doing this? It goes back, what, 15, 20 years?
How long have I been doing like loss? My husband died I'm remarried, and that's actually how we reconnected, was with what I call my living husband. But I've been doing this probably since about 96, really getting out there. I started, as I said, corporate America, and now I'm just doing all kinds of groups, all different, whoever will have me, I like to go.
Oh, that's awesome. And you've spoken across the country. Have you had any international seminars, out of curiosity?
So I've done a couple of things in Canada, if you call that international. Some of the organizations that I'm very involved with go to other places, but I've been stateside.
Okay. What kind of organizations are you associated with, Rachel?
Camp Widow, which is out of Sorry Spirits International. It's a big one that I've always been involved with. TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Military Families. National Alliance of Grieving Children, quite a bit of them that I do there's some that I do every year, and then there's others like EAP organizations, Employee Assisted Programs. I usually skip a couple of years. I have some theories about how would people attend programs. And people from a professional is a little bit different than people from that have personal. So professional organizations such as an EAP, I skip a couple years to the people rotate.
Well, it's obviously with the time that you've been doing this, as well as the number of associations and repeat speaking engagement, you've probably impacted tens of thousands of people's lives, I would imagine. Is that accurate?
I could say that, and I feel comfortable saying that because there's, people attend these and my newsletters or my social medias. I write blogs, and I write blogs about something that I'll be out on a run and I think about. It's because I said I like to be practical, and those are all available on my website. They're all quick on purpose because I know people that are suffering loss or just the speed of which we move on a daily basis. I like to be sure that people have the appropriate time to be able to read it, and too many words people don't read.
Okay, that's a good approach that you've really fine-tuned. Obviously, your website is awesome, by the way. What is your website?
It's rachelkodanaz.com, and I will spell that RACHELKODANAZ.com.
Yeah, when I went out there last week and started digging in, I was just impressed by the amount of and different types of work and things that you have to help people who are grieving or going through that process. So let's jump into your most recent book, Finding Peace, One Piece at a Time. I love the title. And so why don't you share, some of the content that you've written in that?
So thank you. It's all about what do we do with these possessions. And I used to present this, I want to say upward of maybe 8-10 years ago. We've titled it everything, cleaning out the closets, but people will say I already cleaned out the closet. And it's not really the closet. It's the stuff that's in the basement or the attic, the stuff that you put in boxes you don't know what to do with. Family farm, I live in Colorado. So family, ski house now the family's has all aged up, whatever it is. There's just always items and possessions that we have. And what do you do with them? How do you do them? How do you give them to somebody? So when I started sitting down and writing the book, as I said, we originally called it Cleaning Out the Closets. And then in some of my presentation, we would call it From Heirlooms to Underwear, What to Do with This. But I needed to come up because the help of my publisher and their focus group is you had to have a book that had a little bit more broader meaning. And I really wanted to get out of the grief and loss. I wanted to get more into the downsizing, right sizing, being prepared, because I have, and as you and I, Brad, talked about, this is not for your children to do. This is for you to take care of your affairs, not your children to take care of your affairs. So in all these thoughts that I have, transposing that from a podium to a book is kind of difficult because I can explain at a podium what a possession is, but how do you kick that off in a book? And I did struggle, not with the hows when I wrote the book, I struggled with the what. So I tell this story right off the bat, the beginning of the book, of coming home from the hospital, learning that my 32-year-old husband passed away. And I was sitting on the floor in the bathroom, just hysterical. And I looked up and I saw his toothbrush. And I said to myself then, and in the first chapter of the book, what do you do with a toothbrush? It's a possession, but it's the closest thing to that was my husband. It was in his mouth. And I know that sounds weird and morbid or whatever people think. It's a fact, and we all go through it. So that helped me define what a possession is. It's anything that we have a connection to. So in the book, what I pretty much try to say over and over again is keep the items that tell the story and keep the items that create a connection. And other than that, we don't need them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's black and white. And my head is kind of spinning a little bit right now with some of these thoughts just from, the attachment and what if or when something happens, God forbid, to my wife, or if she's dealing with my death, if I precede her in that process, how we can make that a little easier. And it sounds like you've taken a very direct approach. And I think the art of storytelling, which, I have experienced some great storytellers and some that are not such great storytellers, but your scenario right there and what you just shared is a great story. And I'm sure that your entire book has similar examples to express your thoughts and ideas, correct?
Yeah, and I do try to do stories throughout, and some of them, and one of the things that I try really hard to be in this particular book, more so than my other one, is to be a little personal. And the reason why I did that is I wanted people to say, if this sane woman that could talk to Brad on our computers right now, I wasn't the same person that was back there when I was making decisions. So I wanted to like tell my own stories so they understand that I struggled too. It wasn't like I got to this, oh, this could work this way, because it's not the way it works. But I do want to stress, this isn't only about when someone dies. This is really about downsizing and right sizing. Those are my two favorite words. And the reason why I like to use those is I know both of you, we had this in our conversation last week, we both moved from our suburban-y type houses, which you collect and you have a lot of stuff. Now, had we both not moved and our children were forced to sort through that basement, like I've helped so many clients do, because I do a lot of that to help clients, whether it's these days virtual, but is that sorting through to downsize and right size, you have more understanding what's in that product, you know, of something that you find, you have much more understanding. Like an example I like to use is that when we help move my husband's parents out of the house they lived in 50 years, they were alive. And the beautiful piece of it, as we found things, we could ask questions. If you do it after the fact, you can't. So I really encourage the downsizing, right sizing. Don't leave it for your children. I'm adamant about that.
I think that's sage advice for sure. And, you know, we went through that similar process with my mom after my dad had passed away. It's like, you know, the house was too big for her to manage by herself. And it was time for her to be right sized into a smaller domicile. And we did a lot of that. And we had those conversations and asking and pulling out old pictures and saying, I forgot, you know, 30 years ago, you told us about who's in these photos with your mom and when you were in high school type of thing. And it's going down memory lane. I think that is, you know, a positive thing for people to, you know, reflect back on. You know, I think we all have photo albums and we all have, you know, stories and things that we've held on to for a long time that I know that my kids don't know the story behind everything that's in our you know, storage facilities that are meaningful to me or meaningful to my life. So I think that's a really good process to go into eyes wide open and doing it before it has to be done. Meaning, you know, being proactive with those things. I think it's great advice that you're sharing, Rachel.
So in the book, I have a couple terms that I like to use. I like to use the word thinning rather than cleaning out, because if you thin out, then it's not overwhelming. If you feel like you have to clean out the junk drawer, you're not going to do it. But if you use the word thinning, I think that works. The other thing that I want to just actually talk about is I have this program in there. I know we don't have enough time to discuss it, but the magic of 6 piles. But as with this conversation we're having, there's a lot of people that might be listening that don't know a lot about what you're doing. So if you could take a second to, you know, for the people that I brought to this call, which we love networking, and we don't know, you know, we just be a part of this. Maybe you could share a little bit and how that we intertwine together, because we are preparing for whatever phases of our life that are ahead of us.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. So about a year and a half ago, my mom was in the hospital with a very serious bacterial infection. And I get a call from my sister who lives in California, and she was on her way to the airport at the time to go visit my mom. And I had just come back the previous day, and my mom lives in Iowa. And she said she just got off the phone with the doctor and she had taken a turn for the worse and we might lose mom that day. And she goes, she's being transferred to another hospital for an emergency experimental procedure to try to save her life, but they need the medical POA. Do you have a copy of it? And I said, yes, I do have a copy of it, and it's at home. And so I had to leave work, cancel appointments, fight traffic for 45 minutes, freaking out about my mom. The good news is I found the document, the medical power of attorney, got it emailed over to the hospital. They did the procedure. My mom's with us today, and she's doing really, really well. So 87, she'll be 88 this summer, and we're just happy to have her. But that was one of the main things that got me thinking, how can we have all of life's important documents with us at all times on an easy and secure device? And that's what set forth in motion the creation of Red Key. Red stands for Real Emergency Data. And I've been sharing this with individuals like yourself that are planning and trying to help people. My true thought and philosophy is that every single person, every single adult should have a Red Key. My wife Amanda and I have more than 50 different documents out there, from our last will and testament, powers of attorney, insurance details, investment details, a list of valuables if something were to happen to our home and they got stolen or burned. As once again, I had a fire in our house at 7 years old, so I'm very sensitive to that. Natural disasters let your mind go crazy, but all of our kids until COVID-19 were living in different places. We have one in Hawaii, one in California, and one in Washington. And if something were to happen to my wife and I at the same time, what would they have to do to try to put the pieces together, to help provide medical insights or details about our lives and medications we may take? So all that information and those types of things are what are easily organized and stored in the proprietary application that I call Red Key. So thank you for asking about that.
And as I talked to Brad about that, we're going to add a page in it. We're going to add a page about who gets what possessions. Maybe it's pictures, maybe it's, just there's no reason to have, especially with the real heirlooms, there's no reason to have any kind of family squabble after a loss or even going into it. Let's discuss it, because I might think my kid wants something. Like, you've got multiple kids. You might think one of them wants one thing and another one wants something else, but why don't we ask them?
Right.
And so that's what I like to do, is push the discussion a little bit. And that's why I think we just are, the two of us and our ideas just absolutely put it out there to, let's get our affairs in order. And everybody's home right now. So those people that are thinking about it, spending an hour tonight. It won't kill you. Spend an hour tonight.
And I think, Rachel, you've probably seen this. I think that this process is something that doesn't happen in an hour conversation or, in an evening. There's little things that you can do every day to get better organized and to prepare. And I think what you're doing and what I'm doing is helping move conversations that for a certain generation have been more difficult. It's like, well, wait until I die and then you'll see what you're going to inherit from me. Right? As opposed to having that philosophy as an older generation, some of the people in the older generations might have that philosophy. Let's break down those barriers. Let's talk about it while we can. And what are your desires? What are your wishes? What are you thinking about?
All of that.
Yeah. And I think helping people to have those conversations and move the needle regarding those dynamics, and it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when something happens to all of us, then how can we make it easier for our loved ones?
I agree with all of that, but though taking that even a step further is that, because I've been out and about since October. Well, I was out and about and abruptly ended in March, but emails that I've been receiving and comments that I've been made is there are a lot of thank yous, a lot of hand clapping that gave them the courage to have the conversation with their families earlier. And the beauty of that is I have one person I'm working with that is what I call it, repurposing some jewelry now so that it's going to be a wedding ring for the next generation. So there's a lot that I feel that in my journeys, short as they were with the COVID, is that I feel like people are out there thinking outside of the box, not just saying, well, when I die, this one gets this, but why not use it now? And it's beautiful because then everybody gets to appreciate it rather than being in a safety deposit box somewhere out of the house.
Yeah, that's great insight. And certainly COVID-19 has changed our world short term in the last month and a half, potentially long term, as we were just talking about, before we jumped on our Facebook Live. And, thanks for the viewers out there. Thanks for watching. Tell us about your journey with COVID.
My journey wasn't so great, but you know what, the one thing I do like about it, and this isn't actually on my website because I didn't want to put too much on there, but as a blog I wrote last week, is I did contract COVID. And at the time, I have to be honest with everybody that's listening, is I get why it moves so fast, but I also, before I tell my story, I need to say that I have some underlying autoimmune reactions to things, even allergies. I go autoimmune. And I also my mom had some lung issues and passed away early with that. So I'm not a normal case. And even though I'm very active and I am a runner and everything else, it hit me differently, but I don't know where my ground zero is, my ground one is, what everybody's calling it. It could have been I travel. It could have been, it could have been anywhere. I don't know where it's from. And I don't know if I 100% believe in all the testing that's happening, because my case proved that there's so many things that are happening that aren't. But bottom line on it, the actual feeling fluish, last maybe 24 hours, 30 hours. No fever, which really messes everything up, but I went right to pneumonia, and it's a very different pneumonia because it's a cloudy, an atypical. So it was scary. I'm not going to deny it, but I'm back, and look at me how fast I'm talking, and I haven't coughed once, and I haven't had a sip of water. So I'm back. Be careful to all my audiences. I'm back.
I love it, and I think you give us hope and inspiration that we will come out on the backside of this thing, hopefully sooner rather than later for everybody out there. And obviously our thoughts and prayers are with people that are suffering right now, and we hope to the recovery. So thank you for those insights. Are there any other tips or insights that you'd like to share with our viewers today that before we wrap up our call?
Well, again, thank you for having me. But really, really what I want to share with people, I've been doing out there presenting on grief and loss. Don't love the word grief because it's time bound, and this is something that you do forever. There is a lot of positive, I don't want to call them gifts of grief, but there's things that come out of your loss that, just like out of this COVID, we're not going to have as much skin cancer because we're all going to have our faces covered up this summer. We're doing this, as we talked about, we're doing these Zoom and connections to family that we didn't take the time to do. So what I just want to say, out of your own grief and loss, and both my books, Living with Loss One Day at a Time and Finding Peace One Piece at a Time, I just try to share, we don't have control over what's happened to us, but we have control over where we go and what we do with it. And that's probably the thing that I want to share the most. Just take control of what you can control, but not the parts that you can't.
I love that. I love that. That's great advice for all of us in all aspects of our lives. So, Rachel, once again, the best way to have people contact you is rachelkodanaz.com. Is that correct?
Or my email address is rachel@rachelkodanaz.com. But if you go to my website, there's a contact form.
Okay.
Love to help in any way. Great connecting with you. Great connecting with our audience today. Stay healthy.
All right. You too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.